In New Zealand, Education Minister Chris Hipkins set to become the new Prime Minister. No agreement reached at a meeting with Western allies on Leopard 2 tanks for Ukraine. And in France, Macron proposed a major increase in defence spending. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. In New Zealand, Education Minister Chris Hipkins is set to become the country's new Prime Minister after he emerged as the only candidate to enter the contest to replace Jacinda Ardern. Ardern resigned Thursday, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to continue leading the country and will step down no later than early February. Tracy Furness reports.
Chris Hipkins, who played a significant role in New Zealand's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is expected to be confirmed as the new leader of the country at a meeting of the Labour Party's 64 lawmakers, or caucus, on Sunday.
Today I can confirm that I have put my name forward to be the next leader of the New Zealand Labour Party and therefore the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. I'm really looking forward to the job. I'm feeling energised and enthusiastic and I'm looking forward to getting into the work. So I do want to thank the people of New Zealand as well for their patience during this process.
The reaction on the street seemed positive, although it was suggested that maybe it's time for a Maori leader.
He's a good guy, hard-working, he's pretty nice. It'll be interesting to see if he's got the backbone for it. I guess it's a pretty tough job.
I think he did well through the COVID pandemic. I think he manages the media really very well. You know, his responses are, really good. And he's shown that he's able to manage different portfolios.
So I would have liked to hope for them to select even a Māori for the very, very first Māori Prime Minister, but not being judgmental or anything. I just feel like it's time that we have a Māori Prime Minister. But then again, nothing against Chris Hipkins.
Hipkins rose to public prominence during a coronavirus pandemic when he took a crisis management role. But he and other Liberals have long been in the shadow of outgoing Ardern, who became a global icon of the left, exemplifying a new style of leadership. Hipkins will only have a little more than 8 months to prove himself as Prime Minister before the next general election. Opinion polls have indicated that Labour is trailing its main opponent, the Conservative National Party. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Western allies have diluted Ukraine's hopes for a rapid shipment of battle tanks for a potential spring offensive against Russian forces. The United States is urging Kyiv to hold off such an operation in the east during a meeting of defense leaders at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. No decision was made on the supply of requested German-made Leopard 2 main battle tanks nor American Abrams tanks. However, pledges were made for armored vehicles and other weapons worth billions of US dollars to help Kyiv defend against Russian attacks. Nasby Karim has more.
Time remains a Russian weapon. We have to speed up. Time must become our common weapon. Just like air defense and artillery, armored vehicles and tanks, which we are negotiating about with you, and which actually will make the victory.
Despite an impassioned plea by video link for the best from the West, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was told he has to make do with what he is given, for now at least. The issue that has dominated the past few days is the supply, or not, of German-made Leopard 2 main battle tanks, and to a lesser extent American Abrams. Zelensky desperately wants these for his armed forces to counter Russian troops on the rough terrain and open plains of the eastern Donbas regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. But after 5 hours of talks among Western defense leaders at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, including new German Defense Chief Boris Pistorius, little progress was made. In the end, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who is chairing the so-called contact group meeting, said it was not imperative that Ukraine receive delivery of Leopards and Abrams right away.
You may have heard the German Minister of Defense say earlier that they've not made a decision on the provision of Leopard tanks. What we're really focused on is making sure that Ukraine has the capability that it needs to be successful right now.
Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, George Brown, said tanks or no tanks, it would be difficult to expel Russian troops this year. And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov insisted such a scenario will never happen. We have repeatedly said that such supplies will not be able to fundamentally change anything, but will add problems for Ukraine and for the Ukrainian people, he said. On the battlefront, the Russian Defense Ministry said its forces have taken control of the town of Klishchivka, south of Bakhmut in Donetsk. This after last week claiming to have captured Soledar as they attempt to close in on their ultimate target, Bakhmut, where one Ukrainian soldier raised his country's flag atop an aeroplane monument to show the world that it was still under Ukrainian control. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
The U.S. Treasury Department said it would impose additional sanctions on private military company, the Wagner Group, which has been aiding Russian troops in Ukraine. Wagner will be designated as a significant transnational criminal organization, which means its U.S. assets will be frozen and it is prohibited for Americans to provide funds, goods or services to the group. The White House released images of Russia taking delivery of arms from North Korea intended for Wagner forces in Ukraine. It said Wagner has about 50,000 personnel deployed to Ukraine, including 10,000 contractors and 40,000 convicts.
Now, while we assess that the amount of material delivered to Wagner has not changed battlefield dynamics in Ukraine, we do expect that it will continue to receive North Korean weapon systems. With these actions, and there will be more to come, our message to any company that is considering providing support to Wagner is simply this. Wagner is a criminal organization that is committing widespread atrocities and human rights abuses, and we will work relentlessly to identify, disrupt, expose, and target those who are assisting Wagner.
French President Emmanuel Macron has proposed a major increase in defense spending to ensure France undergoes a military transformation amid evolving threats. Macron announced a proposal for 413 billion euros in military spending for 2024 to 2030 to ensure his country's freedom, security, prosperity and place in the world. This compares with 2,095 billion euros between 2019 and 2025. He made the announcement in a speech to military personnel addressing his new defense strategy in the wake of the Ukraine war. Macron also highlighted threats from hybrid warfare, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, and continued threats from terrorism. He said if one main ally happens to shift its focus elsewhere, France will still have the capacity to act with or without Allied help. Macron also called for modernizing France's nuclear arsenal and strengthen the country's role as an independent global power. Hong Kong reported 3,507 new COVID infections, 87 of which were imported. The daily caseload dipped below the 4,000 mark for a second consecutive day. 32 positive cases were reported from 21 residential care homes. Around 10 more locally acquired mutant strains have been identified. 29 more patients succumbed to the virus, bringing the death toll during the fifth wave of the pandemic to 12,868. Government pandemic advisor David Hui said it's appropriate for the city with hybrid immunity to scrap isolation orders for COVID patients. As for the mask mandate, he thinks it can be dropped after the winter season.
Most of the social distancing measures imposed by the Hong Kong government over the past 3 years have already been lifted, except the mask mandate. This woman said wearing a face mask at all times makes her nose itchy. She thinks it's impossible for her to continue wearing masks for the rest of her life. But this woman is cautious, saying there are still thousands of infections each day, adding it's imperative to protect people's health. Neighbouring countries such as Thailand no longer require people to wear masks outdoors and only suggest that one should put on a mask while visiting crowded places or taking public transport. The rules are similar in South Korea and Singapore, but the mask mandate remains for those taking public transport and visiting healthcare facilities. Japan, meanwhile, will review its policy of compulsory mask wearing this spring. Government pandemic advisor David Hui thinks that the coronavirus remains active in winter, so the mask mandate should stay until the end of the season.
After the winter season is over, if the COVID situation is also stable and under control, then I think the universal masking requirement may be removed. However, there are also some scenarios that we need to continue universal masking.
Meanwhile, Ho thinks the government has done the right thing by scrapping isolation orders for COVID patients on January 30th.
I think the isolation order is actually not so meaningful, especially for cases with minimal to mild symptoms. Okay, a lot of people already receive vaccines, and even if they get infected, the symptom can be minimal or even no symptoms. So these people should be allowed to go back to work as long as they stick to good personal hygiene.
Also starting at the end of the month, designated clinics and remote clinics will suspend operations. Ho thinks it's best for designated clinics to continue operation in order to reduce the waiting times for patients seeking treatment at hospitals.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Hong Kong gets ready to ring in the Year of the Rabbit. Macau sees a surge in visitors ahead of Lunar New Year. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak fined for failing to wear a seatbelt while filming a social media clip in a car. Welcome back to TVB News. Lunar New Year is just around the corner. Many flock to Lunar New Year fairs around town to buy flowers to welcome the Year of the Rabbit. Some Chinese restaurants are also packed with diners gathering for reunion dinners. Our reporter Mimosa Ngai is now at the Victoria Park Lunar New Year fair. Mimosa, how's it like over at the flower market?
Hi Sharon, it's dinner time now and the market is not too crowded, but vendors are expecting more visitors to come. Later this evening for last-minute flash sale items. This will be the first Lunar New Year after the city dropped most COVID restrictions. Both flower market vendors and restaurant operators are expecting business turnover to increase. Earlier, I spoke with some residents who visit the flower market here. With the Year of the Rabbit approaching, Hong Kong is buzzing with a festive mood. Many decided to visit the Victoria Park Flower Market, one of the 15 Lunar New Year fairs in the city. Flowers such as daffodils and kumquat trees are popular since they carry meanings such as luck, health and wealth. Today is the last day of the Lunar New Year fairs. Many brought their families to the Victoria Park Flower Market to experience the atmosphere. This girl came with her dad to look for some nice-looking flowers, adding this was her first visit to the Victoria Park Flower Market.
I think it's very nice and lively, and I think it's very nice to see people around and enjoying the day. This one's very big and it's got lots of different flowers.
The flower market also attracts tourists, like this woman who came all the way from Cape Town, South Africa.
I want to buy lots, but it's just hard to carry it all. The atmosphere is amazing. I think it's such a sense of community and everyone's just so friendly and they're so excited for the new year.
But some vendors said there are fewer customers buying flowers than the previous years, despite most COVID restrictions having been scrapped.
In the last few days, maybe the students started to be being in holiday, so there are more people. You see, there are many children here, but I think they mostly just come to watch the flower, but not for buying the flowers.
Meanwhile, some Chinese restaurants are fully booked tonight as many residents gather for reunion dinners, like this tea house in Guangdong, which began operations at 4 p.m. The chairman of the group expects businesses for tonight will be 30% higher compared to the same time last year. He added people have not been able to attend huge gatherings or dinners during the Lunar New Year over the past 3 years, prompting customers to spend more money this time around. And there's also residents who decided to have a cozy dinner at home on the last day of the Year of the Tiger. This morning, the Kowloon City Market was full of people splurging on chicken, fish, and expensive seafood. Like this woman who spent $2,000 for your reunion dinner tonight, having bought fish, black moss, and dried oyster, which are traditional Lunar New Year foods that carry auspicious meanings. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
John Lee made his first Lunar New Year address as the chief executive of Hong Kong. Other senior officials also took time to give New Year blessings to residents at their homes. Chief Executive John Lee talked about how it's time for residents to reunite with families. His wife, Janet Lee, also made her debut. They said rabbits are endearing and good at adapting to change, just like the people of Hong Kong, also indicating the new Lunar New Year will boost the economy and tourism. Secretary for Culture and Tourism Kevin Yeung was being playful on his social media, putting on a cute rabbit costume himself. Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan was among the 8 officials who visited elderly residents, sending them blessings and support for the new year. Many hotels in Macau are fully booked during the Lunar New Year, with room rates soaring to around the pre-pandemic levels. Chief Executive of Macau Ho Yat Sing said the number of visitors has been hovering at around 40,000 mark over the past few days. He believes the figure will rise even higher from day 3 of the Lunar New Year. Christy Khan has more.
Lunar New Year is upon us. And this year, things appear significantly different in Macau, with crowds seen milling around Senado Square, a popular venue for public events and celebrations. To facilitate travelers between Hong Kong and Macau, one bus will enhance services from January 22nd to 29th. If visitors are planning to spend a few days in Macau for the holidays, they may need to fork out large sums of money for accommodation. Like this traveler from Jiangsu province. It costs $1,700 per night. It's quite expensive, he says. Another traveler says the room rate per night is at least $1,000 more than in the past. The tourism sector said the hotel room rates have been gradually returned to around 80% of the pre-pandemic levels. This as the supply of hotel rooms is limited. Wong Fai, who is president of the Macau Leisure Tourism Services Innovation Association, says he believes some travel agencies may have reserved rooms earlier. In the afternoon, Macau's chief executive Ho Yat Sing inspected the Lunar New Year fairs at Tap Sek Square. He said some travel agencies will postpone group tours to Macau owing to the surge in hotel room rates. But Ho believes the number of visitors will go up from the third day of Lunar New Year, noting that it is understandable that most people have returned to hometown to celebrate the festive holidays with family. Christy Khan, TVB News.
British police fined Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for failing to wear a seatbelt while he filmed a social media clip in the backseat of a moving car. Sunak, who apologized on Thursday for a brief error of judgment, had uploaded the video to Instagram during a trip to northwest England. It was widely shared by other users who noticed that he had not buckled up. Local police had said later that day they would investigate and confirmed late on Friday that an offence had taken place. It is the second penalty Sunak has received from police after last year they found he broke COVID-19 lockdown rules, along with then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Sunak becomes the second Prime Minister after Johnson to have broken the law in such a manner. The fine represents an additional distraction for Sunak, whose Conservative Party trails far behind the opposition Labour Party in opinion polls. This was a general election due by January 2025 at the latest. And we are just a few hours away from Lunar New Year. We leave you tonight with the sights and sounds of activities and festive decorations around town ahead of the Chinese New Year. And from all of us at TVB Pearl, have a wonderful Year of the Rabbit.